I'm going to blow your mind right now. If we built a 2-story building the size of Texas, just the size of Texas, every single person on the entire planet would have a 2,000 square foot apartment.
Hello everyone, this is Emmanuel Cook. We will be reacting to a new video today, so make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe down below, and let's get into the video.
If you are not wealthy, the US government has sold you a pipe dream about having a family. In our country, we are sold the pipe dream of the American family. They go to work, they love their kids, everything's perfect and fine, and you're doing what? Contributing to society and humanity. But the quiet part they're not saying out loud is you are providing workers to fund capitalism. No one asks wealthy people to have more kids. That is not a thing. Wealthy people who have kids are left alone. It's only poor people that are asked to populate this country and this planet. I want to say this very clearly. This is not an attack against parents. You are doing the hardest job in the world. But what I am doing is critiquing those who think children are just contributions to give to society and humanity, and that's all they're good for on this earth. If you have children because you have so much love in your heart that you want to give it to another human being, that is the reason to have a kid. But to look at the world and going, well, we got to keep humanity going, we got to keep the population numbers low, the birth rate is low, you got to contribute. That is not a reason to have a kid, to bring a human being on this planet. Wealthy people, the billionaires, the 1%, they only survive off people down here. People who are working for them for pennies, so they can make millions of dollars. Their kids won't work for them as one of those low workers, so they need your kid to do it. This is not an exaggeration. They need your kid to help them build up their business and their money and their bank accounts and their armies. When have you ever seen a wealthy kid go into the army? Oh, wait. There's a reason why the army gives out free cars, because they know they can convince poorer people to join the army, put their lives on the line for even a war they don't believe in by giving them money and cars. That's the only reason they would do it. Because when you're rich, you don't need that incentive. You don't need that incentive. And you're not going to war. And here is where the pipe dream falls away. They don't care if you're destitute, if you don't have the support, if you're not mentally stable to have a child. They don't care about none of that. You're a breeder. Once a child is birthed, their only concern is how do we get them in the workforce immediately. And if they do provide you with government services, you get shamed for it. Because they say you should have not had that child, knowing you couldn't afford it. Well, I would have loved to have the option to not have the child, but you rolled that back. In the name of life begins at conception. It takes a village. This whole idea of society contributing to raise it, that is a pipe dream, that is propaganda at its finest. We have done so much harm to this planet. Maybe it's our time. We've had 1,000,000+ years. We had our time. Maybe it's time for us to go. If you really cared about humanity, you would care about climate change. And you don't. So again, it has nothing to do with humanity, population, love, not dying alone. It's to keep the train of capitalism going for them, not for you.
One of the things that I think people miss that can lead them down really dangerous paths is that population growth or decline in and of itself is not inherently positive or negative. It's the factors surrounding those things that affects it. Population decline as a result of natural factors is not bad. In fact, it can be very healthy. But if you've got an economy that is predicated upon a population that is constantly growing, you've got a problem. Population growth is also not a bad thing. We are not close to overpopulation. But under a capitalist organization of the economy with an uneven distribution of resources, overpopulation means massive suffering for a lot of people. And even though we can all recognize that the growth rate is being artificially inflated, the state is still putting into place measures that will inflate it even more. Because that's what capitalism is all about, expansion far past what's natural or healthy.
Ask y'all a question. I've been doing a lot of errands today, running around. But my question to y'all is that with all this running that I've done today, I done seen plates from Georgia, Florida, Nebraska, people moving to Houston from everywhere. But when they move here, they bring those same horrible driving practices that they've done all these years in the state that they're coming from, and they come to Houston thinking that they can drive like that. Somebody better let them know that when they say everything is big in Texas, they probably speaking of what they're riding with and not whom they're riding with. What's big in Texas is their guns. We believe in guns in Texas, and they believe in using them.
Christian empath here, coming to you with another thought-provoking video. I believe that overpopulation is a made-up crisis, and I can prove it to you. Humans are designed to live in symbiosis with the earth. It is us who choose to live as a parasite and create new ways of separating ourselves from nature. But it is not how many humans there are, it is the way that we are living. So the lie is that stuffing people into tiny spaces to live on top of each other, as many as possible, is somehow efficient. The truth is that efficiency and sustainability will only ever come out of a human's relationship with nature and understanding how to live in harmony with nature and nature's cycles. If you look around, the solutions that are all being proposed are doing nothing but stripping us of our humanity further. Imagine a world where every child that was brought into this world was brought in from love. The love of two human beings coming together and procreating to create life. And imagine those children being taught how to live in harmony with the earth. This is the only real solution there ever will be to the crisis. People who want to jet set around the world and live like kings and queens and do whatever they want, they are the only real problems. You have to humble yourself and find a way to live a humble life. And if we cannot do these things with respect for nature, then really we should not be doing them at all. So once again, it is not that there are too many people. It is that we need to come together and stop disconnecting from one another, which is what is being pushed on all of us. And you're going to continue to see these manufactured crises being used to do just that. Strip us of our future, our freedom, and everything that is good about us.
I said this before and I'll say it again. Overpopulation is a myth based entirely around maintaining the current status quo of resource distribution. There's too many people on the planet, our carbon emissions are going up. No, that is a myth based on carbon footprints, assuming that a person is individually responsible for carbon emissions and not all the corporations that are actually burning this planet alive. There isn't enough food. That's not true. The United States alone throws away more food than what's necessary to feed the rest of the world. Not just the people starving in our country, but the entire world. The issue is that it doesn't make money, so capitalists won't do anything about it. It is cheaper to throw away food than give it to people who need it, because it doesn't make them money. Oh, there aren't enough houses, there isn't enough real estate. There are more empty houses in Los Angeles than there are homeless people. And that's just Los Angeles. Every single argument you hear about overpopulation being an issue is usually driven by a xenophobic effort of saying this is why we can't have this kind of person where we are. When you're taught to fear scarcity instead of the problem being the hoarding of resources, you're not going to think about why hoarding is happening in the first place. And by hoarding, of course, I mean billionaires.
Overpopulation. I think that there are more than enough resources for everyone, but the issue is the allocation of those resources are in the hands of a select few. That's the issue. We have enough space, we have enough resources, but at the end of the day, very few people have all of the things that we need to survive. And so it is an issue when the elite have access to all of those things and the average person around the world does not have access to it. That's where it becomes a huge issue.
Something I find to be a huge misconception is, you all know how we've been told like forever that there's too many people in the world and there's not enough space and we're running out of space and people need to stop having so many kids or whatever. I even remember having this conversation, and it was kind of an argument with my dad about how there's more world than what we think, right? Because what happens is they push us into these districts almost, like cities where there's gas stations and grocery stores and I guess things like electricity and all these things. But when you go out like on a flight or something, or you just go anywhere that doesn't have a lot of people, there's so much land that is untouched. Okay, I mean, look at, I'm just on a hike right now and I'm just thinking about it, and I don't know, it's mind-blowing how much world that we have yet to touch, and the fact that we're all pushed into these little confinements, you know what I mean, like little districts, little areas. It's almost a bit scary if you think about it. But yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think? There's so much land out there that we haven't touched, or you think that we're running out of space? What is your take on it?
Look, I want to keep this short, but I was watching a video of Elon Musk talking about how the decline in the birth rates is the existential threat to civilization. And so first of all, Elon Musk is not an authority on our civilization. If you asked him what our civilization is, I don't know what he'd come up with, but it would be a poor description, trust me. Second of all, I work with a lot of ranchers, just the part of the country that I'm in, and when Elon Musk talks about all of us and all of us having more babies, he is talking about us like a cattle rancher talks about his cows. And here's what's really not sustainable, setting aside the ecological impact of overpopulation and all that. It's these billionaires. I used to have a friend who made a bunch of money on the stock market, then got into crypto, pulled 50 million out of crypto before crypto kind of tanked. He got out in time and all that. Now he coached CEOs of various different tech businesses, and his basic premise, when you got him a little bit liquored up, is that they need to be sociopaths. You need to have a sociopath to operate in the business environment, in the stock market environment that we have created. Nobody else will succeed. And so this guy was sociopathic enough to screen and train other sociopaths. And Elon Musk is the king of it all, right? He's right up there with Trump. Different profiles, I'm sure, but so much overlap. And these people will run us all off a cliff for a few bucks. 100%.
Colleges are closing, partly because of admin bloat and the sheer cost of college, but also because of the demographic crisis. The US has two main problems right now. Number one is an aging population, and number two is nobody's having kids. The number of people over 65 has increased from 13% in 2011 to 17% in 2023. The fertility rate in the US has dropped to 1.8 children per woman, which is below the replacement level of 2.1. So why are people not having babies? Part of the problem is the cost of childcare. It's increased 32% since 2019. But then on the other end, elder care is a really big cost too. On average, it costs $10,000 a month. And so we have this aging population, and it doesn't seem like we're going to have a workforce that's able to support that. Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid all require working age individuals. Immigration is one way to solve it. A large portion of the immigrants in the US are of working age. China and India, where a lot of population growth has happened, are experiencing slowing populations too. This is a worldwide problem. Automation might be the way to solve it also, but I feel like that might make the underlying problem even worse. And the simplest solution is probably just addressing the cost of childcare. It's also a housing crisis problem. One thing that we'd have to do to fix the demographic crisis is make it more affordable to have kids.
Hey buddy, you may have been hearing a lot about overpopulation. You also may have been hearing a lot about declining fertility rates in the Western world, especially the United States. We're down about 20% over the last decade to 2 decades. Now, for the old boomers that run everything, including the country, that doesn't really matter so much because they'll be gone. But when you and I are old, this lack of a younger generation is going to be a big problem. Not just like in literal terms of like having people to take care of you physically, but for the markets and for those people paying into things. Like Social Security won't exist by that time, but anything that for tax purposes, for everything, it's not going to be a good time. But at the same time, there's all this stuff in our food and in our water that's making us less fertile, in addition to the environmental factors of just living in a shitty economy, a corrupt world where people don't want to have kids. It's going to keep getting worse.
A quick reminder, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and let's continue the video.
This person's repeating a very common claim that overpopulation is the cause of our hospital issues, and the claim that overpopulation is causing basically any issue happening in Canada right now. It's not the case. Without immigration, Canada's population is shrinking. Our birth rate just doesn't keep up. We need immigration to keep the country growing. But also, where do you think that the staff for these hospitals is going to come from? Canada is not training enough doctors or nurses, so they need to come from other countries. Like, we have a labor shortage in Canada right now. Kinda, it's complicated. But we need workers. Just because the government isn't building services to care for those workers doesn't mean that we're overpopulated. It means that we're underserviced. Like, if there are new people coming in, those new people are paying taxes. Taxes to fund public services. So, in theory, if those public services are properly funded, they should keep up with the population, shouldn't they? The issue isn't the number of people. The issue is the amount of funding and support. We are more than able to pay for and support a functioning healthcare system. We just have governments who are choosing not to. And the new thing that they're trying to pass blame onto is immigration. It is not the case, because the people coming to the country include doctors, nurses, skilled tradespeople, people who are showing up ready to contribute to Canadian society. They just need to be given the proper opportunities in order to do so, and the supports that they deserve.
Hey, let's talk overpopulation myth and why it's harmful, very classist, and racist. What is overpopulation? Overpopulation is the belief that the Earth has a capacity and that we have reached that capacity on Earth. This is usually from an environmental standpoint. A lot of people believe if we drastically reduce the number of people, we will be able to save the planet, which is not true. A Yale study from 2009 said the world's richest 500 million people are responsible for over 50% of carbon emissions. That's only 7% of the world population. Meanwhile, the poorest 50% are responsible for 7% of carbon emissions. So what's the actual problem? It's not overpopulation, it's overconsumption. I'm sure some of you have heard having a child is the worst thing you can do for the environment. Sure, if you live in a country like the United States. But let's say, for example, you grew up in a rural country where you build your own house, you hunt your own food, you make your own clothes, but you have 10 kids. Which one's worse for the environment? If we really want to fix the environment, let's focus on the overconsumption of the 7% of our world population.
I think that overconsumption is actually a huge issue as well. Just look at the fast fashion industry. They make cheap clothes daily, which pollute the environment overall. Overconsumption is really a huge issue, especially in the States. We eat more than everybody else. We consume more than everybody else. We waste so much food. And as people who have access to these things, we have to be more aware of how much we consume and if we need to consume that much or we don't. We should try our best to just cut back and only consume what we need to consume.
Women, correct me if I'm wrong. There's an overpopulation issue on Earth. There's like 8 billion people here. If women had to finish in the bedroom in order to get impregnated, there would be like 7 people on planet Earth and our overpopulation issue would be fixed.
Overpopulation isn't as big of an issue as people make it seem to be, and I'm going to tell you why. First off, the world's richest 1% of people cause over double the amount of emissions as the world's poorest 50%. So how are we about to tell normal people that they can't have kids, but not critique the world's richest people for living these lifestyles that emit mass amounts of carbon dioxide? It just feels really icky to not critique billionaires for taking their private jets everywhere, but then critique poor people for choosing to have a kid. Secondly, ideas like this usually divert attention away from these oppressive, extractive systems that are causing the climate crisis, and instead it puts all of our attention on women, especially women in the global south. Which is why you usually see people dip into eugenics and white supremacy when they talk about overpopulation. Another reason is that 100 companies are responsible for 71% of global carbon emissions. It is literally just a handful of companies that is causing so much destruction all over the world. Whether it's oil spills, gas explosions, deforestation, or environmental racism, we cannot let these massive companies get away with shifting the blame to normal people.
Alright, so here's another comment that I've gotten quite a few of, along with several variations of it. Overpopulation. We're overpopulated. There's too many people in the world. We already have 8 billion people, so what does it matter if we don't have any more kids? We're not overpopulated. The overpopulation myth, first and foremost, is something that's touted by white supremacists. Usually when you hear people say there's too many people, they're trying to say there's too many black and brown people. And I'm going to assume in good faith that the original commenter wasn't aware of any of this. But even leaving all of that aside, overpopulation implies that we don't have the resources necessary to take care of everyone here. And we absolutely the fuck do. Again, I'm using the United States as a metric because I live here. It's what I know. For every homeless person in this country, there's about a dozen empty homes. Almost half, I want to say somewhere around 40-something% of all food that gets produced in the United States goes to waste. We as a country produce enough to feed, house, and clothe every single man, woman, child, and gender non-conforming person within our borders, and then some. Honestly, we as a country could be completely 100% self-sustainable if we didn't value profit over human lives.
Is overpopulation causing climate change? The problem isn't that there are too many people. It's that there are too many rich people. The richest 10% of the global population accounts for 49% of the world's lifestyle CO2 emissions. If we look more closely at emissions in the US, another recent study found that the super rich and billionaires consume 82 times more CO2 than the average US household. Now keep in mind, it's not as if the average US household is living sustainably. A third study by the Global Footprint Network recently calculated that if all of the world's 8 billion people were to live like the average US household, we would need 5 Earths worth of resources to sustain that level of consumption. Which means means that if everyone was living like a US billionaire, we would need more than 400 Earths to sustain that level of consumption, which is about 399 more than we have now. So next time you ask yourself why the weather keeps getting hotter and why there are more wildfires and why we can't seem to do anything about it, remember, the super rich who hold all the power in this society don't want things to change, because they're enjoying things just the way they are.
When you're an old person, there's not going to be anyone left to take care of you because demographic change is affecting the entire world. Every major country on earth in the next 50 years is going to see a massive population decline. Countries like Korea and China are going to be first to see this major population decline because there's going to be way more old people than young people to take care of them and young people to work and support the economies. Then it will be us. And the only thing that's saving us in Europe from being the first ones is because we have so much refugees and immigration coming in. And they have a lot of kids when they come here. But after so many generations, about one or two, they level off with the rest of the population and don't have enough kids to keep the population growing. And for the economy, we need our populations to grow. But not just grow, we need proper demographics. And within our lifetimes, there's going to be way more old people, way more seniors than there are young people working. That's going to be us, you and me. If we live that long, if we don't nuke ourselves before then, there's just not going to be enough people to keep the economy going all over the world. Every major country right now is going to be in decline. And that's not a maybe. That's a certainty. That's an absolute certainty that population levels are going to drop off and demographics are going to change so that there's a whole bunch more old people. Now, hypothetically, a solution to this would be, just hypothetically, if there was some kind of like pathogen that was developed that made people not live quite so long or only affected the old and not the young. And wouldn't that just be wild if there was some kind of pathogen out there that focused on old people instead of young people so much? That would be a weird thing for a pathogen to do, but that would help solve this major problem.
The overpopulation myth is a racist psyop designed to distract you from the real reason our planet is dying: capitalism. I'm going to read a quick excerpt from As Black as Resistance by Zoe Samudzi and William C. Anderson. It's a really great book. I did a review on it a few videos back if you want to take a look. And I know you guys will just start scrolling once I start reading, so I brought my boy Marks here to help, or maybe not. Okay, just put it on 2x speed. These communities in the global south and those most oppressed in the global north have become the primary victims of climate change. In line with oppressive victim blaming, Western capitalists blame environmental problems on overpopulation and resource consumption by poor Black and brown people. Rather than reevaluating the pace of resource extraction and unsustainable environmental practices, they resort to the sinister logic of Malthusianism. In the name of family planning and empowering third world women, environmentalists often seek to curb the growing populations of the global south, despite clear evidence that industrialized Western states are largely responsible for global environmental damage. In Ecofeminism, Maria Mize and Vandana Shiva assert that industrialization, technological progress, and the affluent lifestyle of the developed nations have precipitated the acceleration of environmental degradation worldwide can no longer be ignored. The main threats are 1. Degradation of land, for example, desertification, salination, loss of arable land. 2. Deforestation, mainly of tropical forests. 3. Climate change due to the destruction of the ozone layer. And 4. Global warming, due mainly to increasing rates of carbon dioxide and other gaseous emissions. But instead of looking into the root causes of these threats, which it is feared are approaching catastrophic thresholds, they are today almost universally attributed to a single cause: population growth. Not only the affluent North and dominant political and economic interests, but UN organizations also subscribe to this view. The culturally imperialist and patriarchal view Mize and Shiva describe asserts itself in the lives of the people already subjugated globally by the whims of capital. By furthering the intention of a racialized domination of women and their bodies, capitalist systems are able to maintain white supremacist patriarchy for their own social, political, and economic gain, while also evading responsibility for the harm they cause. Mize and Shiva continue. Just stay with me. Population growth is not a cause of the environmental crisis, but one aspect of it. And both are related to resource alienation and destruction of livelihoods, first by colonialism and then continued by northern imposed models of maldevelopment. What is also ignored in this carrying capacity discourse is the history of colonial intervention into people's reproductive behavior. This intervention was initially motivated, as in Europe, by the need for more disposable labor freed from sustenance activities, and forced to work productively on plantation farms, roads, in mines, and so on for the benefit of foreign capital. Mize and Shiva determined that it might then well be more fruitful to directly address the roots of the problem, the exploitative world market system which produces poverty. Giving people rights and access to resources so that they can generate sustainable livelihoods is the only solution to the environmental destruction and the population growth that accompanies it. When we think of the hurricanes, earthquakes, tsunamis, typhoons, and all the different forces of nature that have destroyed our communities and taken people's lives, we should be inspired to counter all racial capitalist forces that exacerbate natural disasters, from climate change to the racist nature of emergency response. Okay, I know that was like a little more than just a little excerpt, but it highlights the lie that is the overpopulation myth, because it's easy to blame the global south for overpopulation when capitalism is the root cause of climate change. Capitalist expansion is unsustainable. If we continue down this road, we will completely destroy our planet. Solidarity forever, comrades.
If pregnancy is so natural, why is 1 in every 4 pregnancies ending in a miscarriage? Why are 45% of fertilized eggs never implanting? Why are 1 in every 160 births a stillbirth, if it's so natural? Why is 1 in every 7 pregnancies ending in an emergency C-section? And it's not because we're just having babies older. Women died before C-sections existed quite regularly. If it is so natural, why do women need so much medical intervention?
See, this right here is the issue with a lot of Americans. It's happening over there, it's not my problem. It's a really closed-minded and selfish way to view the world. We're all connected, and we have the resources to help other countries like that, and the ability to make decisions, conscious decisions, to better the world. That idea of it's not my problem because they're not my people is what causes wars. And it's such a gray area. Where do you draw the line? What if I decided that the people across the street from me were not my people? All of a sudden, when their house is on fire, it's not my problem. You can't be that close-minded in life. Well, you can, but it's just selfish. And I know one of the go-to arguments is, well, what are you gonna do about it? Not much, because I'm barely scraping by in a society that won't even help me. And I'm better off than most. You have to stop thinking about it in an us and them mentality. It's all us. There is no them.
Top 10 things not to worry about. Number 4, overpopulation. Did you know that Dalai Lama said that the greatest threat to humanity is overpopulation? That's a dangerous idea, because what's the solution? Depopulation? The greatest threat to humanity isn't overpopulation, it is depopulation. Sometimes our greatest attempt to solve problems create worse problems. Let me put it in perspective. The entire population of the world could fit inside Jacksonville. There's enough room in Texas for every person on Earth to have an entire acre. You can feed yourself on an acre of food. But John, if people keep growing, there won't be enough food. The human population does grow, but food is a population too. It grows too. Apples make apple trees, which make way more apples than that one apple. There are more people in the world than there used to be, but there's more apples too. Some people think the world's just got one pie, and if I take 2 slices, that means you don't get one. But that's simply not true. We can plant more blueberries and make more pies. Then you plant more and more and get more and more pies. Everybody can have their own pie, and it's blueberry. So don't worry about overpopulation. Besides, there's only one real cure to that, and that's you don't want that.
This idea of overpopulation stems a lot from the eugenics movement led by Margaret Sanger, and this was why sterilizations and abortions were a thing, to reduce the population rates, specifically among people of color, and a lot of disabled people as well.
There is no such thing as overpopulation. The Earth does not have too many people. It can support billions more than are alive currently. And the trends are that industrialized countries tend to have negative birth rates. Their birth rates tend to drop. So the trends are actually that naturally a lot of birth rates are going down around the world. So it's not like we're even headed towards a much larger population that we already have. But on top of that, it's just not a problem, because even if you cut the global population in half Thanos style, it won't make any difference. The two leading causes of climate change are the US military and the billionaire class. If you get rid of 80% of the people in the world, but you keep billionaires around, and the US military continues its imperialism, climate change will continue accelerating at the rate it's at. It's the billionaires and their lifestyles, flying around in private jets, inventing ways to accumulate more money like cryptocurrency that are horrific for the environment. If 90% of us recycled every single day, it would make no difference if those people continue doing what they're doing. And if this US military continues doing imperialism everywhere, fighter jets, aircraft carriers, all of those things use fossil fuels. Everything that's happening in Palestine, fossil fuel fueled. Those missiles, fossil fuels. Not only are the wars fought over fossil fuels, but they're fought using fossil fuels. So, reducing population will make no difference if the US military continues behaving as it does, and we continue allowing the billionaire class to exist as it does.
Why every time somebody say the earth is overpopulated, there's too many people on earth, XYZ, I'll be like, so start with taking yourself off of it. How are y'all mad at facts? Of course, babies are going to be born every day, but if something is true, then it's true. The earth is overpopulated. Now, I kind of get what y'all saying about, start with yourself, don't be a hypocrite, but y'all can't be mad at people for stating facts. There's no reason on earth China has 1 billion people. I mean, let's be fucking real. There's no reason on earth India, which is not even half the size of America, has 1 billion people. 1/6 of every person that was ever born or will be Indian. 1 out of 6 people are Indian. Maybe 1 out of 6 people is Chinese also, but that's not the point. You get what I'm saying? Y'all can't be mad at people for saying that the earth is overpopulated. It just is. Not saying that we should make women restrict how many kids they have, but if something's true, then it's
I knew that we were screwed when they started pushing that the world was overpopulated. Yes, I understood the point of it, but believe me, I knew that was going to cause a lot of problems. Because when you say that people are the problems, like any problem really, if you see a problem, the only solution is to eliminate the problem. So when they started pushing that, the people, we were the problem, I knew that we were going to die in the most dramatic way. If us being people, we were the problem of the world, the only solution was to eliminate most of us because we were the problem. So that's why you see people being bombed and the governments are quiet. They don't do anything. Even if they decide to do something, they do it just to mask people, not to really help. So that's why most of the things you see today that used to be against the law, they're allowing it because they know somehow it's going to reduce the population, because the population is the problem. The world is overpopulated, so we need to reduce the population because that's the only solution. That's why we see diseases that have never happened before. That's why we have a lot of diseases like cancer still killing millions of people with no cure. That's why the food we're consuming every day is poisoned. It's also one of the big causes of many people dying or catching diseases. It's like we're being attacked from every angle because they need to eliminate the problem being the overpopulation. And that overpopulation they're talking about, it's us, people who are living right now. So we're screwed. I'm sure countries like Japan did not see this coming. Right now they're having problem with the population.
I appreciate you guys watching the video today. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.